Today I want to talk about the case for the Georgia Bulldogs winning the college football playoff national championship and getting to the playoff semifinal anyway. And all that's coming up after the bumper.
Don't be cornering me. Hold up. Time. You gotta help me with that corner shit.
What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on step milk. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. It's always college football related, sports related. We have a good time. Today, I want to talk about Kirby Smart, the Georgia Bulldogs, and their chance to get back to the college football playoff for the first time since the 2017 season, when they came back from 17 down in the worst game of my life to beat Oklahoma and lost to Tua Tagovailoa as a backup quarterback in the national championship game, when we all know that Oklahoma was the real matchup for Alabama. It's not like I've ever, it's in my craw. It's in my craw. That said, Georgia looks like a team that can get back there, just like they looked like a team last year that could get back there with Jake Fromm, although they have upgraded at quarterback with store-brand Cam Newton, a.k.a. Jamie Newman. If JT Daniels is granted a waiver to play immediately, then he will be there as well. To say nothing of what spring football might look like, where they might actually allow that year to just kind of lapse, and then he's there for the spring. That aside, it's not about whether or not the offense is going to be any good, though it kind of is for Georgia fans. It's about the defense is always good. But I want to start with the offense because that's where we've seen the most movement. James Coley is out. He's at A&M now. His parting gift to Georgia was Jamie Newman. Todd Monken comes in, takes over the offensive coordinator job, and while Kirby Smart has basically said, hey, look, it's Monken's offense, that's what I hired him to do, is to run the offense and call the plays, we shall see is how many Georgia fans think of this arrangement, because when push comes to shove, is Kirby Smart going to point to one of the hats that they sell outside Sanford and say, run the damn ball, or is he going to let Jamie Newman and Todd Monken cook? And that's going to be real interesting, as the strength of this Georgia football team, at least right now on paper, is at tailback. It ain't at wideout, and it ain't necessarily at quarterback, because I think many people expect Zamir White to assume the Nick Chubb bell cow role of tailback, especially after what he was able to do in the Baylor game. Also, if you've seen Zamir White, he is cock diesel, man. It's like him and Shane Lee in the SEC. I'm like, how did y'all get this big? And they are that big. And to be that big at running back means that, yeah, you're probably going to try to run him as much as you can run anybody else, with James Cook taking over that role of like a Sony Michel catching the ball out of the backfield. And maybe we'll see Todd Monken put James Cook to better use than James Coley and them were able to do, even as DeAndre Swift was wildly underrated by many, but Georgia knew exactly what it was there, and the NFL showed that. You also need to take into account the offensive line, right, where they don't return a whole hell of a lot of contributors, and you might actually have to see Broderick Jones actually get some early playing time. I'm not sure that's what you want if you're Georgia. And remember, those are Sam Pittman's kids for the most part, right? Sam Pittman recruited. Sam Pittman coached that offensive line for years. He's very good at it. He's a new head coach at Arkansas, and I want him to do well. That said, hiring a former SEC head coach to be your offensive line coach, it's not a bad look. Matt Luke takes over what I think is going to be a pretty good group. They just need to grow up a little bit and grow up in a hurry if you want to be able to pound the ball the way that you want to. Now, if you're looking at the percentages for the wide receivers, you're going to see that 56% of the returning production at wide receiver comes back, right? So they get 56% of their production from last year on the team. Problem is, that's all in one player. It's all in George Pickens, who's great, who had 49 catches last year, but the rest of the wide receiving core had just 40. And 18 of those went to Dominique Blaylock, who was the number 2 on that team. And he blew out his ACL in November. He could be ready to go. We'll see. But that's really what it is for the offense, right? So if the offense can get you 28 a game, I think Georgia fans are going to be overjoyed by that. If store-brand Cam Newton can make a play when the play breaks down or off schedule, I think Georgia fans are going to be ecstatic about that. And then late in the game, you can do what they all want to do, which is run the damn ball and run out the clock, right? On the other side of the ball, you return a bunch. Monty Rice comes back. He had 89 tackles last year. Eric Stokes is going to show out. He assumes the role that J.R. Reed played last year, and J.R. Reed had an outstanding interception against Notre Dame at a game that I was there for at Sanford. Awesome game. Got to meet Ric Flair and Rich Homie Quan. Dapped up Rich Homie Quan. And we got the hug from Ric Flair. It was a great day for me. Shout out to my man's David who helped put that together. Now, you also need to take into account Richard LeCounte, who was wildly underrated by many outside of the SEC. But Richard LeCounte could be one of the better defensive backs in all of college football next year. You get him back. You also get back, dude, your outside linebacker group might be the strongest group on your defense with guys like Jermaine Johnson. You get Nolan back. And then take into account it's Kirby Smart and it's Dan Lanning and it's Glenn Schumann, who I will put those three dudes up against any three dudes defensively that you want to when we're talking about coaching and understanding what they want to do and how they want to do it. They're going to be sound, they're going to play to their strengths, and they're going to recruit and recruit and recruit. Now, this is going up on the same day that Dallas Turner chose Alabama over Georgia. I'm not going to freak out if I'm a Georgia fan, although you want him, because you've shown over the last 4 years, really the last 3 years, that Georgia can recruit with anybody in the country. They've won 2 of the last 3 recruiting championships, including the 2021. And that's really, really awesome in Nick Saban's conference, where I believe that he's the greatest recruiter of the last 10 years, possibly of the last 20 years, and is up there with Barry Switzer as one of the best of my lifetime, right? Now, add to this the schedule. Everybody's going to circle, myself included, that week 3 game against Alabama, which we're all so excited about because the SEC does not do a great job of cross-scheduling the SEC West teams versus the SEC East teams. However, it's going to be early, and many people are going to want to let that game pass and slide, especially if it's close, because those two teams could meet in the SEC championship game anyway, right? But we're going to give the edge to whomever wins that game on that 3rd week in September. However, what's going to be interesting for Georgia is that they got to run the gauntlet. They got an Auburn game, and then they got SEC East teams, the 3 best SEC East teams beyond them, with Florida bringing up the rear of this really interesting October to November gauntlet that they have to run. It's not that they're not capable of running that gauntlet. As a matter of fact, depending on how you feel about Alabama, they could be favored in every single game they play through the regular season. But even if you don't favor them in an Alabama game, that's still 11 out of 12. But that's kind of the thing. They were favored against South Carolina at home by a wide margin last year, and Will Muschamp and Ryan Olinsky showed up and jacked Georgia for the hedges in broad daylight, like a home invasion, and then gloated about it, had the hedges in their teeth as they got onto the bus. And what does Kirby Smart have to say about this later? Hey, I keep trying to tell y'all, the SEC is great. The SEC is deep top to bottom. And the SEC, trash. You're not supposed to lose to the Gamecocks, Georgia. Not you, not that team against that team. It ain't supposed to happen, especially against a South Carolina Gamecocks team that never looked like challenging for the SEC championship. SEC East championship let aside that division, and then finished with a losing record in 2019. They're rebuilding. You are built. That's what you're supposed to do. But if you don't have one of those losses this year, you're right there. You're sitting pretty. It's an Oklahoma type of situation for Georgia. They should get to the college football playoff just by running the table, getting the SEC championship game. If they lose the SEC championship game, it's like 2017 all over again, right? Where we get Kirby Smart in his blazer going on Sports Center with Scott Van Pelt talking about, hey, you know who doesn't want to see us again? It's that team in Tuscaloosa. They don't want these problems. And I kind of want that to happen again, if for no other reason than Kirby Smart went and took Scott Cochran from Nick Saban and made him a special teams coordinator, which surprised even his own staff. That's how much he wanted to hurt Alabama and how much he wanted to add Cochran. Now, depending on who you want to talk to about this, Cochran and Smart have been close for a very long time. They've wanted to work with each other. They're trying to find something that would work for both of them. Cochran was tired of being the strength coach at Alabama. He wanted to be an assistant coach, one of the 10 on-the-field dudes, and Saban was like, look, you've never done this before. If you want to do this, cool, go do it somewhere else, but I'm not going to hire you to do a job that you've never shown that you could do before. And you could make an argument that his strength and conditioning training was falling behind. He was old school in his approach at a time when they were looking to get more medicine and more science involved into their strength and conditioning program. I'm just a casual observer of that particular conversation, and I'm enthusiastic about it because I love the idea of Nick Saban's lieutenant for 10 plus years choosing to go to the arch rival along with what was once his lieutenant for 10 plus years and Kirby Smart, and them trying to get back to the championship to usurp the former leader of theirs, that is Nick Saban. It's just lush with storylines. And you know, if nothing else on this channel, I love telling stories. This has us all ready to tell all of the stories, man. And that's the other reason why I really expect Georgia to be there. Because if they get past a Gus Malzahn Auburn, after getting past an Alabama, and then they can take care of Florida for another year, that's it for it, right? They got to get into the college football playoff. And then it's about, can you beat an Alabama, a Clemson, an Ohio State, an Oregon, or an Oklahoma? I think as long as we're talking about teams that aren't Clemson or Ohio State, it's theirs for them. They could get into the national championship game without facing either one of those teams. Could be another Fiesta Bowl situation where they get to play in the game that's closest to Georgia, maybe in Atlanta, maybe in the Sugar Bowl, we'll see, or the Orange Bowl, or the Cotton Bowl. Point is, they could get all the way to the national championship game with only playing Alabama the once or having to play Alabama twice, right? Could be, think about this, 3 times in 1 year, because you would get them week 3, you get them in the SEC championship game, and then possibly you get them in a national championship game because of how all of this works. And I know that many folks, myself included, are tired of seeing SEC teams play each other in the college football playoff or in the national championship game. But you know what? It's either that or Clemson, and Ohio State is supposed to win it all this year. We will see if that happens. Oklahoma continues to be the best of the second tier. Oregon is going to be pushing hard for that this year. There's a lot that can happen. But what I'm saying here is, if Georgia does not make the SEC championship game again, it's a bust. They ought to win the SEC championship game, especially if there is no Alabama on the other side. I picked Alabama to win the national championship in 2020. Could be wrong. We'll see, right? That's the one that I've chosen. That's the one that I'm going to stay with. However, it would not shock me to see an Auburn or an LSU, which I need to make that video because I have been saying 5 losses, but I'm going to make a case later for how LSU could get there. And then there's also A&M. Ampersand U is due. Like, you got to get it going. If you're not going to do it with Kellen Mond this year, then you're not going to get it done. All of this is important as we continue to look forward to what the 2020 season could look like, especially in age of pandemic. All right, that is it for me. Deuces.